Jennifer was washing dishes in the kitchen, silently crying. Half an hour ago, she had another argument with her husband. And, as always, out of nowhere, Roy, Jennifer's husband, was a true tyrant. He insulted and humiliated his wife at every opportunity, calling her names because of the extra weight she gained during her second pregnancy and had been unable to lose for many years. He often mocked her in front of friends and acquaintances, trying to show her in the most unflattering light. And today, Jennifer once again failed to please her husband. The reason for the argument was the slightly burnt vegetable stew she had cooked for dinner. She was helping her younger son with his homework and didn't pay attention to the dish. The stew was only slightly burnt, and their children, the older one, Tim, and the younger one, Brandon, didn't even notice. But Roy couldn't keep quiet. "I always knew your hands grew in the wrong place, so I'm not surprised," he arrogantly remarked. "I won't eat this, prepare something else." "But the stew isn't ruined, it's still edible," Jennifer tried to object. "Well, then eat it." Roy sharply pushed the plate away. "It's suitable food for a pig." The contents of the plate spilled onto the clean tablecloth, some of it falling to the floor. Jennifer brought a rag and a bucket and silently began to gather what was left of dinner. She no longer had the strength to argue with Roy. Over 19 years of marriage, this man had drained her of all her energy. Brenda, Jennifer's best friend, to whom she confided all her troubles, urged her to leave her despotic husband, but Jennifer was afraid, thinking that at 40 it was too late to start over. Her older son, Tim, pitied his mother and always stood up for her against his father. For this, Roy disliked him. "You're just as stupid as your mother. You'll never amount to anything," he would say. Despite this, Tim did well in school, was finishing the 11th grade, and was preparing to go to college to study computer science. He was similar to Jennifer, calm and rational. The younger son, 13-year-old Brandon, was a spitting image of his father both in appearance and character. He grew up spoiled and capricious, often getting into fights with boys in the yard, disrespecting his older brother, and demanding a lot of attention. And Roy couldn't have been prouder of him. "Now, this is my copy, a real man," he would often boast to friends and relatives, patting his son on the shoulder. Several months later, Tim graduated from school and left for the neighboring city to attend college. Jennifer was happy for her son, but missed him terribly. After Tim's departure, she felt increasingly lonely next to Roy. The younger son became more and more like his father, and distanced himself from his mother. Jennifer began to contemplate her life more and more. She realized that she no longer wanted to live with Roy. The arguments became more frequent, occurring daily. During the last one, Roy got so worked up that he slapped Jennifer. He had never raised a hand to her before. He would humiliate and insult her, but physical violence had never been part of it. This incident was the last straw for Jennifer. She realized that it would only get worse from there. The next day, she packed her things, took Brandon, and moved in with Brenda, who warmly offered her a place to stay until she found an apartment. Brandon didn't want to move and demanded that they go back, but Jennifer remained resolute. Upon returning from work and finding neither his wife nor his son at home, Roy flew into a rage. He called Jennifer and started shouting, demanding that she come back. Jennifer gathered all her courage and expressed to her husband everything that had been weighing on her mind. Roy was stunned by her audacity. He was used to his wife obeying him in everything. After so many years, his wife had firmly decided to put an end to this story. "You'll crawl back to me, you wretch," Roy yelled as a final remark into the phone. "I won't crawl back. I'd rather starve," but I won't return to you, you brute," Jennifer angrily replied before hanging up. After that conversation, she felt incredible relief and realized she was ready to overcome any difficulties. In the evening, she called her older son and told him everything. Tim was very happy. "Mom, finally you decided to leave him. I've suggested it to you so many times before. You're amazing. Don't worry, everything will be fine," her son said. A couple of days later, Jennifer rented an apartment, and she and Brandon moved out from Nadia's place. Brandon threw tantrums every day. Roy added fuel to the fire, calling their son daily and turning him against his mother. He promised Brandon a paradise life when they would live alone together, trying to manipulate the impressionable teenage mind of his son. He did this not so much out of love for his son, but out of spite towards his wife, hoping she would not withstand it and return to him. But Jennifer had already made her decision, and there was no turning back. Tired of daily arguments with her son, she decided to let him go to his father. "Brandon," Jennifer said during dinner, "you're getting older, you're 13 now. If your father and I end up in court because of you, the court will ask you who you want to live with. I don't want to go to court. I don't want anything from your father. If you want to live with him, I'll let you go." Brandon happily returned to his father. Roy was disappointed that his wife didn't follow their son. Jennifer filed for divorce. Left alone, she began to put her life in order. Tim, having entered college, lived in a dormitory during the week but visited his mother on weekends and holidays. Brandon also sometimes visited her, although his father didn't approve of his visits. 10 years passed. Jennifer became the head of her department at the company where she worked. She started taking care of herself, dressing stylishly, and using good cosmetics. She blossomed and lost weight. From a tired, beaten-down woman with a dull look, she transformed into an elegant, confident lady. The talented young man quickly earned the respect of the management, so he was assigned all the best projects. Over the years, he saved up enough money to buy a 2-bedroom apartment, where he and his mother soon moved. For the last 3 months, Jennifer had felt especially happy. 6 months ago, a new colleague appeared at her workplace, and she immediately started a relationship with him. Paul was 2 years older, divorced, and had an adult daughter. They had a lot in common. Both loved the works of Bulgakov and Dostoevsky, old classic movies, and nature walks. Roy still lived with Brandon. The son barely managed to finish school and trained as a welder, but he didn't pursue a career and became financially dependent on his father. Despite Roy's attempts to raise him, Brandon refused to listen and spent nights out, squandering his father's money. In the span of 10 years, Roy couldn't establish a stable personal life. He dated various women, but none could tolerate his unbearable character for long. So, the man spent his evenings in front of the television with a bottle of beer, and sometimes vodka. Roy was irritated by Brandon's girlfriend, Susan, who often visited them and even stayed overnight. She was as audacious as her boyfriend and didn't stay quiet when Roy made remarks. One day, coming home from work, he found Brandon and Susan in the kitchen. They were drinking, laughing, and loud music was playing. "What's the occasion for celebration?" Roy asked, displeased. "Susan will now live with us. She moved her things in today," his son said, smiling. "What? And you didn't bother to ask me before bringing this whore into my apartment?" Roy roared. "This is just as much my apartment as it is yours. And when you're gone, I'll be the owner here, got it?" his son retorted. "And who do you think you are calling a whore? Are you out of your mind, old man?" Susan interjected, cutting off Brandon. "And who are you? Your skirt is so short, your ass is practically showing, and your face is painted like a prostitute," Roy retorted. Brandon lunged at his father, and a scuffle ensued. It ended with the son pushing Roy out of the apartment and slamming the door shut. Roy rang the bell for a long time, pounded on the door with his fists, but no one answered. He went downstairs, bought a bottle from the nearest store, sat on a bench near the entrance, and started drinking straight from the bottle. He thought about his life, cursed his ungrateful son, and remembered his ex-wife. When the contents of the bottle were depleted, the man, emboldened by despair, decided to visit his ex-wife. However, he lacked the strength to carry out his plan. With these thoughts in mind, he laid down on the bench and fell asleep. When he woke up in the morning, Roy still decided to go to Jennifer's. He knew the address from Brandon, so he easily found the house. After locating the correct apartment, he rang the doorbell. Tim opened the door. "You?" he exclaimed, surprised to see his father at the doorstep. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, son," Roy said peaceably. "I want to see your mother." "Who's there?" Jennifer peeked out into the hallway. Seeing Roy, disheveled, rumpled, with dark circles under his eyes, she was just as surprised as Tim. "Can I come in?" "I want to talk," the ex-husband said. "Sure, come on in," Jennifer shrugged. "Although, honestly, I don't know what we have to talk about." Roy sat on the couch in his wife and son's apartment and complained about his life. He talked about how ungrateful Brandon kicked him out of the house and traded him for some party girl. He spoke of how miserable he was alone without his wife. "You, son, are amazing. You graduated, found a good job, bought such a nice apartment," he told Tim. "And your lazy brother just knows how to party and waste money." "Well, those are your problems now," Tim said. "What do you want from us?" "Money? I don't need money. Can I stay with you guys?" I realized I was wrong. I want to make things right. "You're my family after all," Roy said softly, uncertainly. "Are you serious?" Jennifer couldn't believe her ears. The man who had ruined her life. He humiliated and insulted her, turned her against her younger son. Now, as if nothing had happened, he says he wants everything back. "No, Roy," she said, rising from her chair. "The past cannot be undone. We will never take you back. Go back to Brandon, that's your home." Roy wanted to argue, but seeing Jennifer's hostile gaze, he remained silent. She was no longer the weak woman he used to manipulate. He realized he was not welcome here. Roy sighed heavily, got up from the couch, and silently headed for the door. He really didn't want to go back home, apologize to Brandon, tolerate Susan in his house, but he had no other choice. He was used to being in charge of everything, feeling like the master, but his younger son had gradually taken his place. Roy understood that Brandon was now grown and strong, and he would have to reckon with him. Slowly, dragging his feet, he walked home. Only now did he realize that he was to blame for his troubles. He had destroyed his own happiness with his own hands, and there was nothing he could do to fix it now.